The air in Louisville in the summer of 1862 was thick with the dust of marching feet and the sweet, cloying smell of fear. Kentucky, the state that birthed Abraham Lincoln, was proving to be the Union's most volatile artery, a precarious borderland where neighbor eyed neighbor over the rims of teacups and the glint of concealed pistols. Eliza Vance, all of 24, sat hunched over the main telegraph key at the Louisville relay station. She was a silent participant in the war's desperate geometry, translating the metallic taps of the Continental Exchange into the living language of bloodshed. To the outside world, she was merely a fixture, a woman whose small hands turned the great screws of history. But in her head, the clicks and dashes of the Morse code were an unending, brutal symphony. Da-dee-da. Da-da-da. Dee-dit. Every message was a potential disaster. Casualties high at Shiloh. Grant stalled. Morgan raiding towards Cynthiana. The war was fought on the rivers and the ridges, but it was directed here, through her fingers. Louisville itself was a hive of divided loyalties. Eliza was firmly Union, a commitment solidified by her father, a staunch abolitionist who had been ostracized by their own family years ago for speaking too loudly against the peculiar institution. Yet, many of her customers, the businessmen and cotton brokers whose private, encrypted messages she transcribed, were known Confederate sympathizers. They saw in the Union soldiers nothing but Yankee occupiers. Eliza knew the names of the local men slipping south to join John Hunt Morgan's raiders, and she knew the risk she ran every day. The telegraph office was a place of power, and power invited danger. The night of July 16th began like any other, humid and tense. The only sound was the distant drumming of a military band practice and the incessant, high-pitched tat-tat-tat of the instrument before her. She was working the late shift alone, the station manager having retired to his cot in the back room. A message started sputtering in from Nashville, Tennessee, the deep, urgent cadence indicating it was a priority transmission, likely from General Grant's newly established headquarters. Eliza pulled a fresh telegram form and began transcribing, her pencil flying over the paper. Cipher. Priority read. For Major General Halleck, St. Louis. Sender, U.S. Grant. The message wasn't in plain English. It was in the Vigenère cipher, a complex, pre-Civil War military code that Eliza had been trained to break instantly. She reached into her desk drawer for the key sheet, a series of pre-agreed-upon keyword sequences that changed daily. Today's keyword was rail splitter, a grimly ironic homage to the president. As she worked, substituting letters, the decoded message began to coalesce into chilling clarity. Urgent. Intelligence confirms planned sabotage of land and rail junction at Bowling Green. Target date, night of 18th, Confederate sympathizers led by local fire eater Captain R. Harwell aim to sever critical supply line to Nashville. Must secure junction preemptively. Moving 2nd Brigade immediately from Fort Nellie. Expect minor clash. Execute counteroperation at 0300 hours 17th, acknowledge. Eliza's breath hitched. She was used to reading about death, but this was different. This wasn't a historical casualty list, this was a future tense kill order against a local group. But the name R. Harwell caused the blood to drain from her face. Captain R. Harwell. Robert Harwell. Her estranged elder brother. Robert had been a father figure to Eliza after their mother died, but their political break had been absolute and bitter. Robert was a fierce proponent of Southern rights, arguing that the war was about self-determination, not slavery, and that the North was destroying the old ways. Their final argument had ended with him spitting the word traitor at her before riding off to join the Confederate cause, funded by their uncle's tobacco money. Now, she held his fate in her hands. The telegram was addressed to General Halleck in St. Louis, who would relay the counterorders to the commanders already moving. If she simply delayed the transmission, even by an hour, the Confederate group would have enough time to finish their sabotage and possibly escape the Union sweep. The Bowling Green rail line, a vital artery moving men and supplies to Grant, would be paralyzed. The Union war effort in the West would grind to a halt. If she sent the message now, on time, the 2nd Brigade would be waiting at 3 a.m. Robert and his men would be captured, or, more likely given the nature of preemptive raids, killed in the minor clash. Her hands trembled, blurring the ink on the message form. She was no soldier, no statesman, but in that single, dark room, she was the pivot point. The fate of a campaign and the life of her brother depended on the next few taps of her key. The Union was fighting for the ideals her father believed in, the new birth of freedom that Lincoln spoke of in fragments that trickled over the wires. But the Confederacy was her blood, her family. She looked at the clock. 11:58 p.m. She had to send the acknowledgement to Nashville immediately, confirming receipt. She then had to relay the message to St. Louis. Eliza closed her eyes and saw a flash of Robert's face, not the hardened soldier, but the boy who had taught her to fish. She saw the stacks of bodies she had transcribed messages about, all for a cause he believed was righteous, however misguided. Then, she looked back at the message, sever critical supply line. This wasn't just an act of war, it was an act designed to starve and disable Union soldiers already fighting on the front lines. The entire Union effort depended on these logistics. If the rail line went down, the war would be prolonged, costing thousands more lives. The silence of the room screamed. She thought of Lincoln, the rail splitter who believed a house divided could not stand. She was part of that house, and she was forced to choose which side of the fault line she stood on. Eliza picked up the metal key. Her hand was steady now, resolute. She didn't press the key with the usual soft, rhythmic pressure. She hammered it out, loud and clear, sending the message flying across the wires to St. Louis. Da 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 da. Da dee da. Dee da da it. It was a perfect, fast transmission, the message of doom delivered with professional precision. She added the necessary acknowledgement code, the last dot of the sequence, the sixth dot that sealed her brother's fate and, perhaps, saved the Union's campaign. The next morning, the papers were full of a small, quiet item, buried beneath the major battle reports. Successful Union action near Bowling Green prevents rail sabotage. Several local militants apprehended or killed. Major victory for logistics. There was no mention of Captain or Harwell, only generic references to local fire eaters. Eliza knew. She didn't ask. She didn't weep. She simply filed the telegram away in the locked, official ledger. A week later, General Halleck himself passed through Louisville on a brief inspection. He stopped by the telegraph office, a stern, tired man in a crisp uniform. "Miss Vance, is it?" he asked, his eyes sharp. "Yes, General." "You were on duty the night of the 16th. The Bowling Green intercept." "Yes, General. I received it at 11:58 and transmitted it to your office at 12:01, sir." Halleck studied her face, searching for something she refused to give away. 3 minutes. That 3-minute relay, Miss Vance, secured the Louisville and Nashville line and saved us 5 days of delay. You did your duty, and you did it well. He didn't know the human cost of those 3 minutes. He didn't know the name Ara Harwell. He only saw the perfect execution of orders. As Halleck departed, Eliza watched the sun rise over the river. She felt a cold, deep emptiness where her heart used to be, yet also an unshakable sense of purpose. She had learned a truth greater than any political speech: the survival of the nation and the future of freedom often depended not on the grand gestures of men on battlefields, but on the silent, agonizing choices made by ordinary people in dark rooms, one precise tap at a time. The Civil War was a storm, but it was navigated by the subtle, hidden currents of human conscience. And the rail splitter's vision was one dot closer to reality, a victory bought not with cannons, but with silence.